Tea time.
Welcome everybody! Souldin and the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. Now it's actually been quite a while since I've actually had a day off in order to do a tea time, and to be fair, today hasn't felt like a day off because I've been making Christmas presents. But this is like 8th of December, I believe I'm recording this. Yes, 8th of December. So it's been like, 4 days since I've been able to record a tea time, which feels very odd. Christmas job and quite a lot of work with my dad as of late, really mixed. So despite having this tea calendar, I've not actually done as many teas based off of this calendar as I thought I would. In any case, today is a day I have off and I've got a new tea, and that tea is ginger flavoured tea. Now, to be fair, this could just be a ginger tea, but I decided it calls itself ginger flavoured tea, so I'm going to trust that there is a unique tea of its own. My research hasn't proved fruitful, though, in determining what type of tea it is. I have a feeling this is a black tea which is flavoured ginger, but other people with ginger tea have suggested it is a green tea, twining listing of ginger tea. Have all had it listed as green teas, but other places have listed it as a black tea infusion with ginger, so who knows. Anyway, it's a brew time recommendation. The best I could find was about 3 to 10 minutes, so I brewed this for 6 minutes. And the brand is Davils of Windsor. And in my attempts to find some information, I just kind of threw a bunch of it together. A tea with plenty of zing. This is a naturally warming and invigorating brew with a spicy aroma. Okay, true on that part. It can help with relieving nausea, improve blood circulation, strengthen immunity, and much more. Yeah, I will say here, ginger tea is one of the best things in terms of medical tea, as it were. Peppermint tea is also pretty good for you. Though I'm not a fan of mint, so I've never really tried that. And it's actually a bit of a family tradition now, thanks to me introducing it. Whenever we're feeling ill, we actually try have ginger, lemon, and manuka honey pucker tea, which has been pretty great. So hopefully it'll be somewhat good, somewhat as close to as good as that. It's lacking the lemon and the honey, which takes some of the sharpness of ginger off a bit. But I don't know, I may still enjoy this ginger flavoured tea, which isn't actually a ginger tea. Again, really confusing. In any case, for today's tea time, I've looked about on my tea times that I've already done. I've looked through my sound files, and it appears this tea time, despite being a subject I've had for like 2 to 3 years now in my head, maybe more. Yeah, 3 years at least. Despite having this tea time I did in my head for 3 years, I apparently have never actually made a tea time discussing this particular subject. And a recent video game has actually reinvigorated my interest in this subject. So even if in the case that I've already talked about this subject before, it may be the case that thanks to this other game I've got to mention, it may have some new insight into it. And that subject is loving beyond its quality. And that is when you enjoy a game despite how quality-wise it's not equal in terms of your enjoyment. The basis of this is Pokemon Sword and Shield reviews recently sparked my re-interest in this subject, but it was actually the video game Watch Dogs that kicked off the subject in mind, hence why I say it's been about 3 years since I've had this idea in mind. And I guess the basis for both those things, well, first what reinvigorated it, given I mentioned Pokemon Sword and Shield first, is a lot of people have been rating Pokemon Sword and Shield as like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, even 10 out of 10s perhaps. Pokemon Sword and Shield, on an objective basis, is most certainly not that high of a rated game. I'll be honest here. I had a lot of fun with Pokemon Sword and Shield. But if I'm also honest, it's not nearly as well polished as a game as it could be, as it is compared to other Pokemon games, as it is compared to other JRPGs. It has a lot of shortfallings to it and a lot of problems. It is fun in despite of those problems, but on an objective merit, when sort of putting forth a rating, I would have to give it, at best, a 6 out of 10 sort of thing. Despite, in terms of fun, I had a ton of fun with it. It's an interesting case where, it's a game where I notice a lot of flaws to it, but I still end up having fun. Of course, a big advantage to that is the fact that it's a Pokemon game, and at core value, Pokemon games are fun. The core basis of Pokemon is fun. And Pokemon Sword and Shield did a lot to entertain me more so than some of its recent predecessors. So Let's Go, which I never could even bother to touch, and Sun and Moon, which actually turned me off of Pokemon for quite a bit. And I was actually a big worry as to whether I could actually still continue to enjoy the Pokemon franchise. Pokemon Sword and Shield has proved that I could continue to enjoy the franchise, even if I do recognise that its quality isn't as good as it could be, isn't as good as other Nintendo games or JRPGs, and isn't as good as Pokemon used to be. But so why my interest got kicked off with Watch Dogs is because Watch Dogs is also, at best, a 6 out of 10, particularly in the fact that I played it on the Wii U version. It's a pretty standard Ubisoft-styled open-world game without too much original to it. The main character is very stoic and boring, whose most best sort of part about him is that he's basically the Punisher, and all of the interesting character interactions are the fact that everyone around him is crazy, but he himself is very rather bland. He doesn't have much in terms of design. The sort of plot sort of twists aren't exactly thrilling. The world of Watch Dogs is kind of, boring. The game chugs when it rains. It's got quite a few sort of little glitches to it and such. It's, it's a bit sluggish at times. It's far from perfect. It's far from great even. Yeah, I had a ton of fun with this. I mean, the moment the game would rain and I'm in a car and, the game would be slowed down to an insane halt. Yeah, I couldn't help but admire how pretty the game is. And, how pretty the rain is. In the sort of combat things, I enjoyed the fact being able to use the sort of hacking abilities in order to take out enemies without ever once being spotted. Seeing where they all are via the security cameras, activating traps, and killing as many of them before I even had to get into direct confrontation. I became a sniper, something that I don't enjoy in games, and yet, or I'm particularly good at, and yet through Watch Dogs, I became a sniper and I had fun with it. Watch Dogs had many flaws to it, but in part because I don't often play these types of games, perhaps. In part because I ended up finding fun through the hacking mechanics, even though they aren't quite as in-depth as other people are hoping for. I still had lots of fun. Despite the fun I had with it, though, I'm not going to say, it's an 8 out of 10 game, a 9 out of 10 game. No, because I recognise that it is flawed. It's got problems. But just because you recognise it has problems, just because you're willing to give a game a lower rating, for instance, doesn't mean it isn't fun. And also doesn't mean it doesn't have potential. For instance, another game I noticed had a lot of love that people associated with it. A lot of charm that people found within it is Sly Raccoon, or Sly Cooper. And, because so many people were interested in it, me and Rafi ended up playing it because we found the PS3 sort of collection of it. We got recommended by HB, I believe, when we asked, is there any game you'd like us to play? And she suggested that. So we ended up playing Sly Raccoon, of course, starting with the first one. Sly Raccoon it's kind of mediocre overall. However, it's got a lot of charm to it. And although overall kind of average, you can see the potential in it. You can see the groundwork for improvement, and you can see all the ideas they've got that is like, this needs more polish, but they've got the basis. And, of course, from what I've heard, they improved upon that basis, and they apparently made really great sequels. But people still hold the first game in high regard. My oldest brother, Kiris, also mentioned he would suggest Crash Bandicoot for that case. He feels that the first Crash Bandicoot is rather flawed and overly difficult in a lot of areas. And then he feels that, games like Crash Bandicoot 3, for instance, improved a lot upon that basis. And yet, at the end of the day, when, for instance, I think of a Crash Bandicoot game, although I know Crash Bandicoot 3 is kind of the superior game, my thoughts turn to the first Crash Bandicoot game. Maybe part of that nostalgia, but I still hold the first game in high regard, despite how, when you get down to it, it's not as good as later entries, and it's not as good as it could have been, and it's not as good overall, sort of thing. It's a good game, but not as great as the amount of fun I would merit to it. Same with Sly Raccoon, sort of thing. I enjoyed Sly Raccoon more than I feel the quality is from the game, sort of thing. And again, with Watch Dogs, if I was going to rate on fun, I'd say an 8 out of 10 out of fun. Would I give Watch Dogs an 8 out of 10? No. Pokemon Sword and Shield, for instance, 8 out of 10 in fun. I had a blast with it, mainly up to the end of the 5th gym. After that, it kind of it drops a bit, kind of like Pokemon X and Y, where like the first 3 gyms are fantastic. Oh my gosh, it's such an adventure. And then you get to like the sort of 4th, 5th gym area, and it's like it kind of goes up a bit with the 6th gym, and then it kind of goes down a bit again. Then you do Team Flare stuff, and it's not as exciting as it could be. And you feel the pacing's a bit odd in it, and all the sort of things, stuff like that. Where you end up sort of thinking, this game is sort of like, not as good, but is still fun. There's also cases where games are just outright bad, and yet they still end up being fun. Sonic 06. Sonic 2006. It's not a good game. It is obviously not a good game. It's glitchy, it's messy, it's, much like other games, like, say, for instance, the Elder Scrolls series. And yet, people have shown through Let's Plays and such that you're able to have a ton of fun with it. I myself have a ton of fun with Sonic 2006, be it its rather clunky co-op mode, or heck, even the main campaign itself. As many problems as it has, I'd still ultimately play Sonic 2006, say, over Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 is a significantly better game, but I don't personally enjoy it. Sonic 2006 is a significantly worse game. That's an objective fact. You can't even argue against it. It is kind of terrible. Yeah, I'd have more fun playing Sonic 2006 than better games. And, fun isn't a way to measure quality. Quality can be all sorts of different things, but what you find fun, that can be often based off preference. I'm not a big fan of FPS games. I suck at SRPG games, and yeah, there's a lot of good sort of FPS games or a lot of good SRPG games. Open world, for instance, there's a lot of really good open world games, but I can't stand the genre. Played Horizon Zero Dawn. I played it wrong, entirely wrong. But I could see that it was a good game. It's just that it's not the type of game that I could enjoy myself, not with how I try to play the games. And again, like I said before, the Elder Scrolls series seems to be one of the games which is kind of latched onto that. Like, when you get down to it, it's amazing how many people excuse the amount of faults with it. It is a really bad... The Elder Scrolls sort of games, of sort of talking about Bethesda's reign of it, with, Oblivion and Skyrim and, the Fallout series as well, Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, they are filled with glitches. It's actually a joke about how many glitches Bethesda games have. It is horrendous the amount of problems there are with it and how buggy these games can be, and yet people still enjoy them. In fact, they enjoy them partially because of the glitches. They're one of the few series which still manage to get high ratings despite the problems. But again, I'm wondering, is part of that because of the fun factor? Is it that people found these bugs and had fun with them, so they didn't mind the bugs at all, and though they still ended up giving a higher rating to it? Likewise, again, Pokemon Sword and Shield is getting high ratings, but is that because people are being based it off how much fun they've had with it, or are they basing it off of the actual objective quality they think the game has? It's a curious one. When do you have to sort of sit back and think, okay, this game could be a lot better, but it has core bases of fun things to it. How should I rate that at that point? Should I rate it based on, rating it, suggesting people, you could have a lot of fun with this? But I feel the problem with that then is that I think you can see what makes a good game. It's got mechanics which work well, it's not glitchy, it's got a lot of things that flow together well, and stuff like that. But when it comes to fun, a lot of that comes down to personal preference. I think in terms of how I would suggest that ratings should try to go, is I'll use Nintendo Life for example. Even though, again, that was part of the problem I found, them giving Pokemon Sword and Shield, despite a blistering list of complaints throughout their review, they still gave Pokemon Sword and Shield an 8 out of 10. I'd kind of suggest almost the opposite in a sense, where, with their review, they've got a little summary as they give the sort of rating. A lot of sort of reviews do that. But in that point, I'd say the sort of rating star should try to reflect the quality of the game. And then with the description, you say about what you found fun with it. Try to inject the personal aspect. Another instance, let's think of games. Azure's Wrath. On a technical level, as when you're judging it as a game, it's not actually a good game. It's a fantastic movie, not a very good game. And yet, I'd still rate it highly, consider it highly as a game. It's one of my favourite games on the PS3, despite when you think about the game factor, it's pretty weak. Mostly on the basis that most of it feels like an interactive anime. Heavy on the cutscenes and such, and a few times where you feel like you're playing a game. And yet, I still love it. Flaws and all. Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy, 7, I don't know, I just found it really charming. It's not that great yet. Maybe it's because I don't really play many shooters, but I found myself having fun with it. On an objective basis, the LEGO Star Wars, the video game, is a very simple thing. It's very basic, but you get a co-op buddy, and you see all the sort of hilarious sort of ways they've decided to depict the Star Wars universe and the sort of cutscenes and such, and it becomes pretty brilliant. Likewise, I have no interest in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. I have no interest in, most of the sort of Lord of the Rings franchise. For instance, I have no interest in the Shadow of Mordor style of franchise. And yeah, I've enjoyed them for various reasons. Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, because of the co-op factor to it. Shadow of Mordor, because mechanically it's got a lot of good ideas and such. Though stylistically, I have problems with it. There are different ways we end up enjoying games, but as well as different ways we consider games good. And sometimes these don't necessarily co-align. Dr. Lautrec and the Forgotten Knights, I believe. I believe I mentioned that in a video a while back, or was that the Christmas video? But that game is kind of a bit of a jumbled mess as it tries to throw three different gameplay ideas of Metal Gear Solid Professor Layton, and Pokemon all into a cauldron together and mix them up. And they kind of they kind of clash in terms of the tone and they clash in terms of the feel, and yet I found the game charming. I found it fun, despite how, if you think about it, it doesn't really piece together as well as it could do. And movie games, and anime games, and licensed games, a lot of licensed games. Rugrats Rule Ransom is probably not like a super amazing game. It's probably at best, sort of average. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it because I'm a big fan of the Rugrats sort of thing. Should I in turn rate that higher because of fun or not? I'm at the point, it's, as I say, I'm loving beyond its quality. And again, that could be various reasons, it could be because of the franchise attached to it, it could be because of the sort of graphical stylistic setting, or the charm of the characters, it could be that mechanically it's good, although the sort of characters itself you don't enjoy. Arslan, The Legend of Arslan, I end up not enjoying the characters and story of that game, and yet mechanically, with a lot of the ideas they had with it, were a lot of fun. Gameplay-wise, I loved it. Story and character-wise and such, not a fan. Oh yeah. I feel like I kind of repeating myself a few times, so I feel let my thoughts. Let's end that there for a second, and let me try out this ginger flavored tea. It should be ready. I always have to sort of mumble on for a bit just to make sure that the tea's actually cooled down enough to drink. Okay, well let's see. Thoughts on that? It's definitely a black tea, and. When I typed in ginger flavored tea, brew time, the first recommendation I had was 10 minutes. This is definitely not to be brewed for 10 minutes. That is really bitter. Really strong bitter taste. It kind of flows away quite quickly, but it leaves a bit of a nice taste on the tongue. A little bit of a soft taste. Depends on when it hits the tongue. It does make my throat already feel a little bit better. It feels like you've got a bit of the... It feels like... It tastes more like a black English breakfast. There doesn't feel like much ginger flavour to it. And yeah... I don't know, it does feel soothing like a ginger tea. I'm not a big fan of the taste. Again, I'm not a fan of black tea without milk. This would actually probably gone pretty well with milk. Because again, the ginger flavour isn't too strong in this one. But... Although this is actually kind of my hope, because I actually had the English breakfast tea from this box recently, and it tasted nothing like an English breakfast. So hopefully these teas haven't been jumbled up. It would explain why this tastes more like an English breakfast. But it wouldn't explain how it feels soothing like a ginger tea. Like, I feel it's got a bit of a zing, but it definitely feels more like the black tea overpowers the ginger flavouring of it. In any case, yeah, so... It's just something I've noticed that, it's and it's kind of annoying in a sense that it feels like people aren't being honest with a lot of the sort of review sort of thing, and it feels like people are afraid to admit a game is fun when it's flawed. Admit they're having fun with a game that isn't too great. And again, I noticed that with the Pokemon Sword and Shield, but I also noticed that people, weren't willing to, some people were kind of mentioning, in games which had lower sort of review ratings, like, I still had fun with it, or no, it isn't that great, but I had fun, and I think that's a good thing to, keep in mind. You don't have to have a great game in order for it to be a fun game, and normally at the end of the day, a game developer has done good if they've made a game fun. However, the point of rating a game is more so than just a recommendation, and I don't think rating a game really is the best way to recommend things, because people have different tastes. A recommendation should be words, a short summary or something of that kind, or a 10 to 15 minute review sort of thing, wherein the sort of actual content of the sort of review, or the content of what you're saying in terms of the recommendation, should be how you recommend a game for someone. What kind of games they like, this game is a big fan for this kind of person sort of thing. You're more likely to enjoy it. Whereas the score, I feel, should try its best, again, it's really hard to be unobjective, but should try its best to try and reflect the overall quality of the game and give a clear message to developers of, this game isn't too great, you need to, and then maybe through some bullet points say, you need to fix this area and this area, these might be able to improve the game. Reviews should be able to, sort of, outside of, the financial sales, be able to tell a sort of person who made a game, there's problems, it needs addressing sort of thing. You need, here are way, it's not as good as it could be. But, of course, then people still have fun, but it's not a problem that people still have fun. Again, you can have fun with bad games, again, loving beyond its quality. Mediocre games can end up being a lot of people's favourites because of the characters and settings and such, or the licenses to them. And, even vice versa. Sometimes games can be good, but not actually sort of end up being that enjoyable because the things just don't appeal to you for one reason or another. There's aspects going against it, or it's just not your preferred genre, And, in each cases, fair enough. It's all right to feel like that, and I feel that's what should be taken away from this Tea Time in particular, in loving beyond its quality. It's all right to enjoy a game regardless of its quality, and it's all right to not enjoy a game regardless of its quality. And you shouldn't be judged for that. Because at the end of the day, fun and quality aren't the same measurement. And I feel that's a good way to end things off on. Again, tell me about any sort of examples you've got in your mind of, games that you recognise aren't actually that great or just mediocre, but you had a lot more fun with them than you'd think, or had more fun with them than you think should be rated, and vice versa if you want. And of course, tell me about what you thought about this Tea Time. Hope you enjoyed this Tea Time, and cheerio!